This is episode 10, The Richest Hill on Earth. Deep beneath the surface of Butte, Montana, lies a maze of history stretching for as far as the eye can see. They call it the richest hill on Earth. For decades, this patch of ground didn't just fuel the Industrial Revolution, it built empires, sparked wars, and drew thousands of souls into the dark in search of a better life. Hi, I'm Levi Kessler, and you are listening to the History Below the Pines Storytellers Collection podcast. Here, we do not just look at the landmarks, we look at the stories buried beneath them. Today, we are leaving the pines of the Black Hills for a moment to head west, into the heart of one of the most significant mining districts in the world. Standing atop the Orphan Girl Mine yard, the World Museum of Mining isn't just a collection of artifacts. It's a preserved piece of the American spirit. Founded in 1963, just as the era of underground mining in Butte was beginning to shift towards the massive open pits, the museum was created to ensure the legacy of the Copper Kings and the immigrant miners would not be lost to time. With over 50 structures spread across 22 acres, it's one of the few places on the planet where you can stand in the shadow of an authentic headframe and then walk through the hell-roaring gulch, a recreated 1890s mining ghost town. It's a place where the dust is real, the history is heavy, and the stories are still very much alive. To help us navigate the complex legacy of Butte, I'm joined today by someone who lives and breathes this history every day. Jeanette is the executive director of the World Museum of Mining. She oversees the preservation of this massive site and helps tell the story of a city that once boasted the highest standard of living in the West, and the dangers that came with it, of course. Well, thank you, Jeanette, for joining us here on the History Below the Pines Storytellers Collection podcast.
Yes,
Very,
thanks for having me.
yeah, we're very happy to have you. So Jeanette is the director of the World Museum of Mining in Butte, Montana, a
Yes, sir.
very historical place and home to the Orphan Girl Mine. But tell us a little bit about the museum and everything that you got going on.
Oh my goodness, we don't have enough time to tell you about everything that's going on, but a little history on the museum. So the museum actually officially opened July 18th, 1965. But the idea of the museum actually started in about 1963. There were a group of people, a lot of exchange club members who got together, and the history of Butte is extremely unique to everything else around us in Montana and, in all honesty, the United States. And so they wanted to preserve some of that history, and not only the mining history, but as well as the cultural history that surrounds the mining. Actually, the mining created the history, the culture here in Butte. And so they got together and they started trying to figure this all out. And in 1964, the Anaconda Company, which was the big mining company here in Montana, caught wind that we were trying to preserve essentially their history. And so they donated the land that the museum now sits on, which includes the Orphan Girl Mine that operated until the late 1950s. And so they started to build a museum that had just the head frame, gallows frame. A lot of people think it's an oil derrick. It's not, as well as the engine room. And then throughout the 61 years now that they were together, they put together a whole small mining town, kind of a replica of what Butte could have looked like in the 1890s, and all of the businesses that came to Butte because of the mining. And then we also opened up our underground tour, which has gone through a few different stages through time. And so there's a lot to see at the museum. It's not just an hour stop usually, because we have the underground tour and as well as Hellroaring Gulch, which is our town, the mine yard, a miners memorial, and we keep growing every day.
That's awesome. It sounds like our collection. We keep getting old books and old files that estates drop off, and our collection went from very small to very large, and now we're running out of room. So
Yep.
we make the same comment that our collection's growing every day. But
Yeah, exactly.
that's just part of being a historian and a history and a museum.
Exactly. Exactly.
But when we first heard of the museum, the mine really kind of clicked in our head. Obviously, we have a lot of mines here out in the Black Hills.
Mm-hmm.
We're home to the Homestake Mine, which on Thursday of this week celebrates its 150th anniversary of
Oh,
being.
excellent.
So
Yeah.
it's a big, big week for the Black Hills. But, it wasn't just the Black Hills. It was Montana, it was Wyoming, it was
Hmm.
Idaho, all those states that made the West what it is.
Exactly.
The Orphan Girl is a very interesting mine. We were doing some research on it. Tell us a little bit more about the Orphan Mine and how deep does it go? What were they mining?
Sure. So the Orphan Girl Mine, on the tour, you can only go to the 100-foot level because below that it's filled with water. When they turned off the pumps in Butte, all of the 10,000 miles of tunnels that we have, or of mines that we have underneath Butte filled up with water. But it went down to about 2,800 feet, which is where the sump was, in terms of mining. So it was, it was decent sized for sure. She was decent sized. And our main products were rhodochrosite, galena, and sphalerite. In simple terms, lead, zinc. This is the second time today I've blanked on it. And silver. There we go. Lead, zinc, and silver.
It happens. That always comes up when we're working with landowners because that's something we do is for research behind these landowners' mines. And
Yes.
I come in with a whole notebook and everything, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, so what did they mine? What was like the primary? What was the secondary? And then there's always the one landowner who's like, so what did they like mine when they weren't mining whatever they were mining, whenever they weren't, mining that?
Yeah.
Of course, he asked a question that I just didn't cover in my research. So that's always how it goes. I always blank like that.
It's the second time today that I've blanked like that too, and I have to say it practically daily. So, oh well.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. So do you give tours as well, or do you have tour guides?
So we have tour guides. I've been with the museum since 2010. I started as education director, then did a little bit of curating, and then slipped into the director position. So I've been director since 2015. So I have done tours. I probably could not give a quality tour of the underground right now because it's been so long. So we do have tour guides on staff that give fantastic tours, at least based on all the feedback that we get. That just, I mean, the underground tours are an hour and a half long, but it covers the Butte history and the mining history. And the best part about it is it takes you to the 100-foot level, which was actually where the miners worked. And so, and we just finished some renovations on the 100-foot level. We have a 65-foot level that was actually made for the museum that's about to start some rehabilitation this Friday, I believe, actually Thursday or Friday. And so we're excited about that. But you still get to see all of that work. The shaft needed some rehabilitation and just for future safety issues. So
Sure.
that's been going on. But yeah, it's a great tour. Um, and the best part is you really get to feel what it's like in a mine. People walk out of there and they're like, I could have never done that. And they don't hear all the sounds that were happening. They don't have all the equipment going by. And yet they still go down there and they feel like they've been to work in a mine.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? It's something that we see in our research, and when we're standing underground in these mines, it's a whole
Mhm.
different world.
Yes,
Like,
it
I
is.
couldn't even imagine, we have like everything from silver mines here to lead to gold.
Hmm. Hmm.
So pretty common when it comes to mining. But you see these old tools that they used, and the fact that you're relying on your fellow miner to strike
Mm.
a drill that's, right next to your face, right next to your
Mhm.
finger, and hope that
Yes.
he doesn't take your hand off with it. You're having a lot
Yep.
of faith in that miner, but it's for sure hard work. And these days people complain about hard work. I don't think they realize what kind of work they were doing in the 1890s, 1880s in the West.
Oh, no, definitely, and mining especially. But I will say that of the Butte miners that I've met and talked to, they have such a passion for mining as well as a passion for the city. It's inspiring, and they form such great bonds with their fellow miners because of exactly what you were saying. They had to trust them not to you know, take off their finger. They had to trust them that they were going to tell them when the blasting was happening. They had to trust each other to, survive the day. With, several mines, with the best thing to come out of the mine is the miner.
Yeah, that was what was important back then, you know.
Hmm.
Make sure they
Hmm.
went down okay and make sure they come up alive.
Even today, that's still the best thing to come out of the mine is the miner.
Yeah, I think that's just like us over here,
Yep.
we always strive to have safety, especially at the home stake.
Hmm.
Now it's the Sanford Underground, but
Hmm.
they still have the cage, um,
Yes.
and they still have, all the mine rescue safety technicians and whatnot. So safety is big when it comes to mining, that's for sure.
Definitely. And they've made such strides in the mining industry for safety. So it's definitely safer than it once was.
Yeah. So Butte, Montana, was it founded from the Orphan Girl, or was
No,
was
we
she
we
one of
were
the big mines?
actually we were actually kind of on the outskirts. We were founded earlier. It was actually kind of started. It was the original. Um, right now I'm blanking, of course, but Marcus Daly went in and we were already mining because people, of course, came out west for gold. We've all heard that story. And then they discovered they were in one of the gulches, Baboon Gulch, and they discovered that there was silver in the area. And gold had kind of played out at that time for the most part here in the area. And so they discovered that there was silver, which then we have a Silver Bow Creek was named because of the silver bows were created. And so we did silver for a little bit. And then there was a very rich um, ore of copper that was found by Marcus Daly, and that's when we got termed the coined the richest hill on earth. Was he's like, nobody knows it now, but we're standing on the richest hill on earth for copper because this is when electricity was about to come out. And of course, war. We definitely thrived during war because we provided a large portion of the copper for ammunition and such during that time. And so and it just kind of spread out. We have 17 head frames standing now, but there were many others throughout the town during the bulk of the mining.
That is super interesting. The Black Hills, we always talk about head frames.
Mhm.
That's if you follow our Facebook or TikTok, that's something we talk about our head frames and what they did and what they were for. And
Exactly.
you see the old photos of head frames in the Black Hills, the black and whites. Watson Parker, a historian, the dean of Black Hills history, has a whole file on them. Today,
Mhm.
there's like nothing that remains of the head frames in the Black Hills because they made them out of wood, and the wood
Yes.
would eventually rot and or get torn down for safety purposes. Recently, we got to see an original head frame that was left over from one of the mines in the Black Hills. It's one of the last ones standing.
Yeah.
So you can say Butte was kind of ahead on the game when it comes to head frames because they
Yep.
use steel instead of wood.
Well, we started with wood, of course. That's where it started. But then we started going deeper and deeper and needing, bigger and better operations. And so we actually still have two of our wood head frames, the Modoc and the Modoc and the Parrot standing. That's included in that head frame count. And the other 15 are the steel head frames. And ours is actually a small one. Ours is it's 85 feet, I think, to the platform where the shivs are. And then up to the shivs, it's about 100 feet. And ours is a baby.
Wow. Yeah, I mean it's still impressive. It's an
Yes.
impressive feat that they
Yes.
came up with that engineering design to, take you down to the mine. And you better hope that head frame worked. Otherwise, it was going to be a
Yes.
long trip up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what shocks me. I mean, you're right. Actually, we had one mine, and this happens often, that had the head frame on the surface, of course, but then it went, and I was recently told how many feet, but I don't remember. It went part of the way down, and there was a whole other hoist engine and room basically underground to take you all the way down to the bottom of the mine. Just because it went so deep, one head frame couldn't do it. What amazes me is how, like, our head frame wasn't originally at the Orphan Girl. It actually originated at the Colorado mine, which is just down the street from us, about a mile or two, I think. Um, and they moved that steel head frame, that 100 feet high, tall, um, it's an artifact now, over to the Orphan Girl Mine. And then when they brought it over to us, they wanted to add an additional cage. So we're actually unique in that we have an extra foot on our head frame to support that weight in order to ensure the safety of the miners and the equipment and everything going in and out of that mine daily.
Interesting. Yeah. And you had mentioned how one head frame can do it all. That's kind of how what we've heard about the home stake too. Is they had
Hmm.
several hoists. They would go down, they'd go
Yes.
on the main level and go down again and keep going
Hmm.
that way. So I think
Yeah.
that was pretty common in the larger workings underground.
Yeah. But think about in the early 1900s, the work that it took to build an entire system. Oh, because they're not small.
No.
They're large. The hoists are large.
Yeah. They were a feat. I mean, they were massive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I call them the dinosaurs of mining.
There you go.
That's the nickname I have for him. Okay,
That's a
so we've
good one.
talked about the Orphan Girl, we've talked about the head frames. What would you say is your favorite piece of history at the museum?
And in all honesty, because we have, and this doesn't directly answer what you're saying, but we have so many, and we're down to just a few people that lived the underground portion of mining back in the heyday of Butte. They were born in Butte, mined in Butte, military. It's talking to them and hearing their stories and their passion. One person in particular, Tom Holter, who gave tours at the museum for years, and he was involved in other pieces of history here. We have Our Lady of the Rockies, which was a statue that was helicoptered in by pieces on the mountain, and he was involved in that. And then he was born in a town that no longer exists because of the open pit mining, or not a town, an area of town, because of the open pit mining. And so hearing his stories and still hearing his love for Butte, as well as his passion for mining, is just always inspiring. And he's still around. He comes by the museum every couple of months after he comes uptown. Our downtown is our uptown, to pay his bill, and he stops by to say hi. But hearing his stories, and then we have a volunteer on staff that comes religiously on Wednesdays, who you can show him a picture of a head frame, or a whole bunch of the head frames that were on the hill, and he can name each one of them like that. But he has those stories as well because he worked in the mines and he grew up here in Butte as well. And so he has all of his stories growing up in Butte. And so that's the piece of history and the part of the museum that I like the best, are the actual people who lived it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's really cool full circle, that's why we started this podcast.
Hmm.
Because we live in a generation that is hooked to media,
Yes.
multifacets of media.
Hmm.
And museums are great. Museums
Hmm.
are amazing. I could spend hours, days, weeks, months, years in museums. But the next generation, or the generation below, doesn't really care about the brick and mortar. They're more on the electronics. So that's why it's like I want to combine the multimedia facets and the history all in one, with
Hmm.
the storyteller's collection,
Yes.
because that's where the history is. It's going to keep
Yes.
living on. It's always going to be recorded. It's always going to be right there.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
but one of the coolest episodes we have ever done was one with the homestake miners, where we
Oh.
sat down with a group of homestake miners and got to hear each of their stories individually. It was a very intimate, very close knit group of guys who all had similar stories, but all different. All
Exactly.
different episodes of life underground.
Mhm.
Um, and I always say those are the real treasures. Those are the real gems. The guys
They
who
are.
lived it, worked it. And of course, the women, I mean, they were also very important. You know, the ladies in the
Oh,
West were a big deal.
yeah. Oh, well, I mean, women are what kept a lot of the town operating. They had to support those miners because women in the early 1900s, of course, they didn't mine, but they did the boarding houses, they supplied the lunch, they took care of the kids, they were the school teachers, they, sewed a lot of the clothes and such. And so they were an essential part of the community.
Definitely. And then you have the red light districts as
Of
well.
course, and of course we have the longest running red light district, so there's remnants of that still here for sure.
Really?
Um, yeah, yes. Yeah, we have the Dumas brothel that is still standing, and you can go into their cribs and such. I've taken a few tours of it. And then there's the Myra brothel that I haven't actually been to. A friend of mine actually owns it, though. His family owns it. And so a lot of that history is still standing here in Butte.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yes,
Uh, I thought Deadwood, maybe Deadwood's the second longest.
probably. I know because ours closed in okay, I'm going to say the 80s, I believe. It's not a topic I talk about much,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I
No,
forget the
no, you're
dates.
good. I would say I believe it was 1980s is when feds raided the Deadwood
Mhm.
brothels as well. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's also another important part of the mining ghost towns and mining towns of the West.
Yeah, definitely it was part of the life.
So, okay, we've talked about your favorite piece or your favorite pieces. What would you say is the oldest? You know what? Let's skip that. What would you say is the most unique piece of the museum? Unique.
Honestly, it's one that I've mentioned. I think the most unique piece, I mean, there's so many there, but the most unique piece, because a lot of people don't get to experience the original area, is our 100-foot shaft station, because that's an artifact, and our shaft, because that's an artifact in and of itself. And that's where the story really comes to life of the mining. If we had to go up onto the surface, wow, the most unique. That's a tough one because we have thousands and thousands of artifacts on site. We're 22 acres. Um, but I would almost, as I sit here and I talk about the underground mining and the shaft, I'm going to almost say that St. Helena's Church, which was a church that was in Meterville until the 60s, and it was carried over to the museum. And it was moved because of open pit mining. So it really tells the story of when the miners were mining because it stood there and so many baptisms and marriages happened there. And then it was moved out of the area because of continued different mining techniques. And then it was moved here. And that one church actually has a relationship to another church that we have on site that was also moved here, our St. Patrick's Church that was moved here, that was built by the same priest and bishop, and the parishioners from St. Helena's Church that we have on site actually went to the dedication a year later to the St. Patrick's Church. But then also beyond that connection, we had 8 miners who unfortunately lost their lives in the Orphan Girl Mine. And a couple of those miners actually had their services in St. Helena's Church. And one of those miners who lost their lives, his mother passed away just a few weeks after he passed away of heartache. And her services were also in that church. So those connections, I think, are important and strong and just make that a really essential part of the story.
Yeah, I will agree with you fully on the church part. I think there's something about you step into a mining town, and there's a lot of them out here in the Black Hills. There's ones that are still around and ones that are ghost towns on private property. One of our landowners actually owns a abandoned Catholic church,
Mhm,
and you open up the door, and it's abandoned, but you open up the door, and it's almost like you can just feel, like the community, the parishioners.
mhm, mhm.
You could tell it was a spot where they gathered every Sunday morning.
exactly.
They took a break from the life of mining or doing business wherever they may do it to
Hmm.
worship and to come together. And
Yes.
it was a very important part of the mining towns because that's who you hear about, right? You hear about the miners, the bankers, the red light districts, and the Catholic priests in town. Like that's
Yes.
in every mining history book ever.
Yes.
So I think it's
Yes.
really neat that you guys still have an old church there.
Yeah, well, and two of them on top of it, and both of them kind of tell unique stories in and of themselves. But I think the other essential part of the story is, our no smoking signs here in Butte at one point were in 17 different languages because of the number of immigrants from different countries that came here. And so we had a lot of churches at one point, because everybody would come here and still you know do their own religion, practice their own religion. And so there were different churches. We had our little neighborhoods, Dublin Gulch is where the Irish went, and things such as that. We of course had the Cabbage Patch, which was our poor section. And so we had our little communities, and so these churches kind of help us share that story.
That's beautiful. It's neat to think that they all came together for one
Hmm.
common good to do the job of mining.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
You do have
Yeah.
to wonder, how did they all work together? Like, what if you were paired with one miner underground and he spoke English and another one spoke Spanish?
Well, I've heard stories that, and I want to say that your pard was spoke the same language as you, but I've heard stories that some of the bosses would employ people or put them near each other that had spoke different languages so that they would work more than they would socialize. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I mean, I could see that. I could see as a boss, I would potentially do that to get them to stop,
That's a smart
gossiping.
tactic. No, that's smart.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, good luck, but you better hope sign language. So if you're drilling, where to put the drill at and where you're dynamiting, and
Well, and they came up with their own language, and of course, Butte has its own mining language. Like I believe you guys have your own mining language your way as well. Came up with all their words and such. But you learn to communicate because your life depends on it.
yeah, if you communicate the wrong thing, you might be dead.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So do you guys have a boot hill there as well then?
Not really. We have three different cemeteries. I think it's three different cemeteries that we have going on. So yeah, yeah.
That's always a common question. We'll post a ghost town and people are like, "So what about a cemetery? What about Boot Hill?"
Yeah.
And usually they were moved to the larger cemeteries. Sometimes they had small cemeteries, but
Yeah, we have three cemeteries, and part of it is religion. Is it three? Yeah, it's three. I'm blanking because I haven't done my research on it. And then there's some other areas where it's said that some of the poor were buried, and somebody's doing some research on that and such. And so I actually work with one of my volunteers. Actually, she is big on the Find a Grave, and she wants to do her best to get as much information on Find a Grave and doing the research of those that have passed away. She's also been doing a lot of work on getting the tombstones of the people that were in the Spanish American War to where they should be and such. And it's fun to listen to her. She just started volunteering and she's helping us organize some of those artifacts. And she'll start coming up with, oh, I think they're at this cemetery. Do you mind if I do some research? I'm like, of course not. Please bring us the story. We want the story with the artifact because the artifact's cool, right? That quilt that we see, that's cool. But what's the story behind it? I bring up quilt because we just had an incident where we've only had three names on a quilt. And so we had a few people do some digging and we were able to date that quilt back to the early 1900s. One of the people graduated from Montana Tech, which is here in Butte. Their I believe it was their sister married somebody who was the one of the bosses at the Granite Mountain Speculator Fire, which happened June 8th, 1917, which is the worst hard rock mining disaster to date. And so he was related to that. The father of the person the quilt um, was a pastor here in Butte for just a couple of years and went to Helena, but their entire family is buried here. And so putting those pieces together and bringing those stories to life is what's exciting about all of that. And of course, mining was involved in that story, as was a few other stories as well. So yeah, it's always fun to see that background.
Yeah, I think research makes the world go round. And I say that because research is a big portion of what we do.
Mhm.
Um, and it's very important to what we do because, uh, you look at the face of History Below the Pines and people are like, oh, ghost towns, ghost mines, that's what they do. They
Mhm.
play with their labs and go underground and, go document history. But in all reality, we spend hours
Mhm.
researching through our various collections of historic rare books of the Black Hills, and we, dig up old files of who these people were.
Mhm.
And you almost start putting pieces together. And it's really
Mhm.
fun when you're like, oh, Johnny was related to Jack, who owned a mine just up the road a mile, and Jack's wife was sisters with, so and
Exactly.
so, and his
Exactly.
daughter. And it's really fun to just piece this together. And then you
Yep.
figure out that everyone knew each other and
Yeah,
everyone was related somehow.
and that's exactly it. And all we had actually a location, I think, with Bakersfield. The person who donated the quilt was from Bakersfield. So we're like, why is this here in Butte? That's really what led us. And thankfully, the names of the person who sewed it, who gave it to their grandson, was on there. And so we were able to take those names as well as, and we're like, and why did this person in Bakersfield, who doesn't have the same last name as these other two people, how is she connected? Um, and so we, newspapers.com, family ancestry and such, um, definitely digital assets have certainly helped in a lot of that research as well. We were able to trace that family tree, and somebody actually sent me a family tree of this family and how it was all interconnected and how it was here in Butte and why that quilt found its way back to us.
Well, that's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like you
Yeah.
have a lot of history there, and it's definitely on the bucket list. I know I put it out in we have a history group chat. And
Mhm.
I put it up there earlier a few months back that I was like, hey, we should go to Butte this summer and check it out. Go on a
Yeah.
little field trip. So maybe we'll make our way up there. We do have a owner who we're working with who just found ties to a mining ghost town in Montana, not far from there. I'm blanking on the name. It's on Forest Service land. But it was from a lead businessman who started a mine over in that area.
Okay, that doesn't
So
surprise me.
I'm kind of wanting to make my way over there and do a full circle kind of connection, but
Yeah.
it's definitely on the near radar of places to check out.
Yes. Well, let me know when you're coming this way.
Yes, I definitely will. And thank you for joining us here on the podcast and sharing some history and some stories. It's been a blast
Yeah. Well,
learning
thanks
about
for having
you.
me.
Yeah, anytime. And your guys' marketing is top notch, may I add.
Thank you.
You guys do a wonderful job. So keep it up, keep sharing the history. That's what we love to see.
That's what we're trying to do. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Jeanette. Jeanette, thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking history of Montana and of the West. It's the mining history that really built this country. And it sounds like you guys own a ton of it over there at the museum. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for talking history and sharing some stories. Our viewers are big fans of the mining history. So this was a great episode, and we just wanted to show our appreciation to you and to your team, and what you're doing over there to preserve Montana's history and the history of the West. It's easy to look at the head frame against the Montana sky and see it as a relic. But after talking with Jeanette, it's clear that these sites are more like monuments to the people who built our modern world, one bucket of ore at a time. The richest hill on earth gave a lot to the world, but it took a lot from the people of Butte as well. If you ever find yourself in Big Sky Country, do yourself a favor. Make a stop at the World Museum of Mining. Stand in the gulch and listen to the wind as it races through the old mining relics. You'll hear the echoes of 1,000 stories. As we close this episode of the Storytellers Collection, we just want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you for tuning in every week for our countless stories and countless historical adventures, and for taking time out of your day to spend it with us and keep history alive, not just here in the Black Hills, but across the West. It's important that we talk about the history and talk about the miners and talk about the mines and the towns that built this country. As we celebrate 250 years here in the United States of America, it's stuff like this that built our country, and it's stuff like this that we need to talk about. So thank you for joining us here on episode 10 of History Below the Pines. If you enjoyed this trip to Butte, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms and follow us on all of our social media for more visuals and behind the scenes content from our various research and historical adventures. You can find more information about our project and our mission to preserve the privately owned history of the West at our soon up and coming website that we are currently building. It's not on the web yet, but we are building it. When it's finished, you will be able to Google historybelowthepines.org, and that's going to give you everything from our daily blogs to historical photos and documents and videos and everything else under the sky. And that is something we are very excited about. For now, you can find us on all of our social media platforms. We are most active on our Facebook and TikTok. YouTube is also being kind of built up, so we are working on a new video series that will come out this summer on our YouTube as well. So lots of stuff going on, a lot of places to find us and our content. But thank you guys for being here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for nerding out on history with us.